We look like giants again, I think.
It's true.
Right?
Like blobfish. That's boring. I haven't seen much
Right. I know.
One in your man.
Slept in, huh? Sleeping Beauty.
I slept and slept and slept and slept and slept and slept and slept.
It's good. Yeah. Did you go to sleep late?
One.
Okay.
Not especially.
Right.
I don't know, man.
Just need some rest.
I think I've historically underestimated the impact that anything emotional or mental has on my need for sleep. It almost always catches me off guard, so maybe it's just that. I don't know.
Yeah, like I read that article you sent me. That, right, it's exhausting to be going through like this uncertainty, all of the emotion around this. That's a different kind of taxing on our systems. Probably even more so than just physical strain.
I have always found that it's more than physical strain. Because days when I do physically a bunch of stuff, I do not feel like exhausted the way I do at all. I think it's way worse. Worse meaning, for me, like, I immediately require a hell of a lot of sleep. Yeah. Physical stuff gives me energy.
I was just thinking that. Yeah, it doesn't drain you.
This stuff, taxes. It's exhausting.
It's really what you want to be doing right now.
What?
Taxes. In light of everything.
I know. It's okay. My major tasks are completed. At least those ones.
Yeah.
The one W-2 that I'm supposed to be waiting for is like it's like $200.
Oh, it's so annoying.
It's like a nothing. So I don't know. I don't know the legality of these things, but I wrote to my agents. So I was just telling Ali today, like, not agents, tax person.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, they could all be dead for a while. I have heard nothing from them in response to all the paperwork that I keep uploading.
Thought of that too. I was like, I should check in with my accountant. It's not a young thing. That happened to my dad, actually. Your accountant died.
Recently?
This is a few years back, I guess. It was just so strange. You know, like, okay, I guess we're finding it. Accountant.
I wonder what happens to all those people's, like, office stuff.
Right. I couldn't sleep last night.
No?
Could not. That's happened to me a few nights now. I'm just like mulling things over. But then I woke up today and I felt like I had remembered myself. Like, you know how like that lady was like, oh, you're not in your body?
That lady from...
That lady.
years ago?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I'm in my body.
Just as of this morning?
Just this morning. I woke up and I was like, oh yeah, I remember this girl. Like, it's like I am who I am when I was like 8 years old, that I forgot I was. And I don't know who I've been being. I don't know who I've been being, but yeah.
I'm not sure if I should be concerned.
I know, it's fine. It's fine. You don't have to get it. You know how I was talking about like that, I don't know why I keep bringing this up, but like the people who were like, this isn't my mother.
Yeah.
It's like that, but for myself. I was like, they put in a double for a really long time. And I thought it was her, but it wasn't.
And you thought who was her? Who was who?
The me. I know how this sounds. It's fine.
I'm glad it's fine. Nice to meet you.
Right?
What? You are who you were when you were 8 years old.
You know what it makes me think of? All those, this is making me think of Russian Doll. And that, like, oh, you have to, like, embrace your inner child or whatever. But there's, like, a kind of cohesion that happens when you do that. It's making me think of that maybe something fell away. Something is falling away that has me. I'm not like spinning up here so much in my head anymore. I've kind of like surrendered some of that. And maybe it's allowing me to like accept who I actually am and drop into myself. That's what I mean by it.
You've been full night.
Full night, yeah.
Sounds like you got it. The it. It's over now.
I got the it by being like,
great.
The it doesn't matter.
Great.
The it is a distraction.
So we're done with that.
We're done with that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Wonder what we're gonna do and talk about.
I don't know. I'm like, what am I gonna do with the rest of my life? Now that I don't need to be trying to figure it out.
You could write a book. You could. One of my mom's favorite suggestions is to draw a comic strip.
What? Has she ever done that? No. Oh, your mom should be a superhero.
No, she hasn't done it.
No, but your mom should be a superhero. Because you know how she's really mysterious? And you're like,
yes.
What's going on there? Couldn't you kind of see her living a double life? Where the reason her knees are so bad is because she was out fighting crime all night.
You know what's funny about this? At one point, Sarah, like, was talking about her mother and how mysterious and confusing she was.
Yeah.
And she was like, we somehow, I don't know if the conversation transitioned from, like, I don't know who she is. Yeah, she was talking about how she didn't know who she was. And I was like, it sounds like your mother could, like, easily be a serial killer.
Oh, right.
And not only was she, like, totally you're right, which I thought was a good thing, but she also was like, yeah, well, she would go away for hours at a time in the evening, and we never knew where she was going. I was like, what? She was like, yeah, she never explained to us what's happening. Just, you know, on the subject of mothers, double lives.
Yeah. I don't know what I'm more scared of in that story. The fact that Sarah was like, could be.
Or
that it could be.
I don't either.
But yeah, your mother likes to. Why does she think that doing a comic strip is?
I'm not clear where that's from. I think I had a passing interest in drawing when I was a kid.
I really admire people who can do that.
Do what?
Comic strips.
I've never thought about it, which is amazing because my mom is constantly suggesting it. Mm-hmm. So it's an aerobic activity to not think about it.
It's just very intimate. Like even more so than prose. Yeah, because you're not only like telling your story, you're showing your story. You're like, and you're also like drawing how you see the world, which I think is more intimate than than words can be sometimes.
That's assuming that it's your story.
Oh, I thought that's what you meant.
Mm-hmm.
There's like, did you ever read Funhouse?
No.
It's this comic strip, and literally like how the artist does it or did it is she used to like take pictures of herself in poses, so like holding a coffee mug,
That's weird.
and then have to draw from that place.
Huh. It seems like an unusual path for a...
Seems like it would take a long time.
Yeah. I don't think that's what most artists do. What do I know?
Yeah. What else is going on? It's raining again.
I think that's part of this whole thing.
Yeah.
It's a lot of rain. And I appreciate it. I just wish it wasn't happening right now.
It does kind of make night and day blur into one because it's very dark.
Yeah.
And there's already enough of that happening.
I felt like I woke up and was like, is it night?
Right.
And then was like, yes, it is.
Yeah.
We better hurry up and do whatever we need to do today because it's about to be night.
Yeah, right. I kind of feel like that too. Like, okay, the day's over, right?
Yeah. I feel like it is. I was complaining to Ray during some workout like a week ago, and he was like, yeah, you're fine. There's the rest of the day. And I was like, what is he talking about? He's like, you're the rest of the day. And it was at 3 o'clock or something. And I was like, what day?
What's the rest of the day?
Some people are like, the day is half full, and other people are like, the day is half empty. I wonder which one I am right now.
The day is however many meals you have left.
The day is however many meals you have left?
Yes.
But that could be literally anything. Oh my god, can I stop yawning? I forced my parents to work out.
Oh,
That was good.
did you train them
Sometimes, yeah.
today though?
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Oh, trained, yes.
Yeah, like, and now you're instructing them. Yeah.
And what's weird is that there was an attempt to like put it in the calendar and put it because they're doing a big old calendar there, which includes like meals and who's responsible for each time and when and blah blah blah. Everyone's like stuff, workout stuff, blah blah blah. And for a minute, I had time both with my sister and with all kinds of people in the house to work out, and it just like didn't happen. So now my tack that I'm taking is more like, oh, are they on the phone already?
Okay.
Where's the weights? Just like regardless of what's going on.
Oh, really?
And that actually worked today. I was like, oh, is Mama taking Aditi tea? Can you ask her where the bands are so you guys can use them to work out? And my dad was like, oh, okay, and then told her that. He was like sitting on the couch, but nothing's happening.
Yeah.
And then he was like, oh, here they are. And then that pretty quickly turned into me being like, all right, here we go.
It's like surprise attack workout.
Yeah, I mean, and that's my new tack that I took with Aditi as well. I texted her being like, okay, in between each of your clients, you do 20 push-ups, 20 bicycles, and 20 squats. That's it. And then do a session. And then do it again, and then do a session.
And she's been doing it?
I don't know to what extent she's been doing it, but she said she did something like it. I don't know. It's hard to know how much to push people with stuff like this, because on the one hand, it's like, they're like, hello, I'm trying to do work. I'm trying to like, do the important stuff. On the other hand, like, again, if you don't force people to do it sometimes, it's like it never happens. I don't know. And there was another response to the fact that like either Aditi and I are going to have like heaps of time, 40 minutes a day or whatever this magical window is, or we're not. And if we're not, then like every time I literally see her on FaceTime, I'm like, hey, I'm do some catch-up.
Yeah.
And she's like,
Like, it could also, I think there's something brilliant about that, actually, about making it part of her work.
So she was saying something about feeling more in her body.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I don't know, she was having a kind of a hard time describing it, but basically that when she is like sitting and doing it, so she has back-to-back sessions, like 2 days a week, but they're all just like clustered.
Yeah.
And basically she said she feels like that she doesn't have a body for like that period of time, and it's like, oh, right. So,
especially on the screen, which is ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like incorporating it into her work, that when she goes to work, this is part of being at work, this is part of like what makes her useful or productive for her clients too. It's not just for her, which I'm sure does have an effect. You're more present if you're more present, right?
Sure. So yeah, hopefully that.
It'd be funny if she just like started doing them in sessions. I don't know if they noticed. Do you think they would notice if she just started doing squats, but like holding the camera?
I don't know if they would.
I'm listening.
I've been trying to get her to do that with Ishan for like I don't know how long. She's like, "Oh, the kid," and I'm like, "Yes, the kid is awake." He's very willful though. Some people on Instagram have babies that are just like will like be used as a weight, and I'm totally fine with it.
Mm-hmm.
He would be like, "I will squat you."
He would. He would totally do it with her.
Yeah, he came into the workout today and was like, "I'm exercising," and was like pulling bands, and I was like,
baby bands. No, he's too young. No, I was like, oh, what a cute market. No, we're not doing that. Babies don't need to have 6-packs.
We already have them.
What?
They already have them.
No.
Well, babies are like have the strongest pulls.
Okay.
Yeah.
They do?
Yeah.
Is it just because their cores in relation to everything else is so big? Like, they have shorter arms.
I don't know. They're literally like moving their legs and arms around all the time, and they're on their backs. They like draw their legs up and like to their face. That's like not easy to do. In the same way that they're like very flexible.
Those babies, they have everything.
They've got it all going for them.
Seriously. Not fair.
Well, they've got a lot to do. They have to like quadruple in size in like the course of.
Yeah, what would you do if you had to quadruple in size?
I'd be eating so much more almond butter and oats. And wait a minute, I'd be doing the exact same thing. The exact same thing. Yeah, I'm feeling a bit stir crazy. I think it's because I haven't been able to go outside. No, I mean like out back. Yeah. I keep wanting to go to the Indian store.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, apparently like I'm a little annoyed at hearing stuff like this. Like this week is the one that matters the most. Definitely don't go into it.
Now's the week to stay in.
Yeah, I was like, well, maybe somebody should have told me.
But I couldn't stand leaving the house.
Like,
now's not the week where you have to stay in. Now's like code yellow week. Next week's going to be code red.
Well, that's the problem if you take everything really seriously, is that you've then not left your house for a month, and people are now like, okay, so this time, now this week, and you're like, wait, what about the last 3 fucking weeks? That being said, California or LA, no, California's been doing really well.
Yes, I've heard that too. My mother went to have lunch at a sandwich shop today.
Was she allowed?
I don't know. I was confused by this story. I was like, what? What is she doing? It sounded like she was just going about her every day.
Nobody can quarantine your mother.
No, that's true.
It's not possible. So good luck, Canada, Canadian government.
Joanne Grant is on the loose.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a part of me that's like, I think you could go to the convenience store.
No, of course I could. But
No,
like,
I'm just thinking about it. Like, would it be responsible and safe?
who can tell? I was saying to Ali something about, I was telling Ali that my accountant, my tax people, I was like, who even knows if they're dead or alive?
Yeah.
And then later in the conversation, I said, like, then I have to try getting up my Schrodinger's accounting. My Schrodinger's accounting, something. And she was like, oh, did you see that? And I hadn't, and apparently there was something going around about how you have to, like, about how COVID is like the Schrodinger's virus. Because you have to like act like you have it. So you definitely have it, but you also definitely don't have it. So it's kind of like you have it and don't have it at the same time.
Yes. I missed something in that story. Who's your Schrodinger? What?
I said my tax people, who may be dead for all I know, is how it started.
Yeah.
Because I've received no response from them.
So they both are dead and not dead at the same time.
Well, so then later in the conversation, I referred to them as Schrodinger accountants.
Oh, okay.
And she thought I was making reference to the fact that this has somewhere been called Schrodinger's virus. Because
I didn't know that. Okay.
Neither did I until today. Because of the way that you have to like act like you have it while you don't have it. Or maybe you do. Although it's likely you don't.
Mm-hmm. You probably don't. But the second that you think you don't, you do.
Right. So we've all got it. We've all not got it.
Yeah. I was reading today about how because the air quality's gotten so much better, that is better for everyone's health too, because apparently there's this this pollution air molecule that actually like gets inside people. And that's why really dense populations like New York City, where there's like a high level of pollution in the air, people are more susceptible to getting COVID if they have higher levels of that within their systems.
Interesting.
And so now that the pollution in the air has gone down, actually it's good for all of our like fighting off this virus. And hopefully we keep the air quality better.
That's not happening.
But exactly. Are we just gonna like turn it up like the second this is all over?
Yeah. Was there any doubt about that?
I don't want there to be doubt.
There's no doubt.
I want there to be doubt. I want us to be like, oh, actually, maybe this is nice that we can see the horizon. Let's keep this up. And also that the world has gotten quieter. Of course, it's gotten quieter, but there's something really, I don't know. There's something really special about that the world got quieter now.
I don't feel like I'm experiencing any of this.
Really?
Nothing. It's all like an idea that supposedly is happening.
Yeah. It's hard to tell because it's spring here in LA and you just see pictures.
That's cool if that's happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like apparently people in India can see the Himalayas.
Himalayas?
Himalayas? Himalayas?
Yeah, but you said Himalayans. You mean the mountains?
Yes.
Not the people.
Yes.
I was just thinking about the fact that Delhi is very polluted, and apparently, like I've been confused by the numbers there.
Mm-hmm.
They're not high in India.
Yeah.
I don't understand that.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I don't know why that would be. I asked my mother, and she was like, she had all kinds of like weird explanations that didn't sound real.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, between the population and the if pollution is in fact a factor, then like that between all of these things, I don't know why
Yeah, that I can explain.
Who can see the Himalayas?
Not everyone, but some people in India can see it from their houses.
But it is in their houses.
That they couldn't point. I'm not sure exactly.
Because that's where the Himalayas are.
Yes. I'm assuming people that don't live there.
People that don't live.
Like, next to the mountain. I know it's not one mountain.
Yeah, I don't, it's like saying people in Colorado can see the Rockies.
Wherever you are in India?
No, of course not. It's gigantic.
Yeah.
But of course we can't see the Rockies from here. It's not pollution.
Right.
It's because we're too far. That's what I'm saying. Is like I wonder what that is in reference to, because either you can see it or either you can see them or you can't. But what that has to do with pollution, I'm not sure. Rather than just distance.
You've never experienced that there?
Never experienced what?
Well, like in Los Angeles, you'll have a clear day when you can see the city, and then days where it's totally covered in smog.
Mm-hmm.
And so that doesn't happen.
I'm sure it does.
Yeah, okay.
But India is not a small place.
No, I know. I don't know where it is exactly.
Right, because it is like saying Americans can see you know what I mean?
Rocky?
Yeah. Or like, because of the pollution, Americans can see the Grand Canyon. It's the question of like who. I don't know what that would mean.
Okay. Me neither.
I don't think there's any chance that the pollution will stay low. Yeah, I also don't know why the numbers aren't higher there. It seems really weird.
Yeah. I don't know if that's, did they act in time?
No, I don't think so. I don't think they did anything special, and it just seems like conspicuously low, and I haven't heard any sort of potential explanation for it.
You want to read the book?
Sure.
Okay, so we're at book 8, and what happened yesterday? They were at Pelagea's.
Right.
They were at this neighbor's house, dressed up in mustaches, in various costumes, and everyone was very delighted by it. And then there was a barn that would tell your future, and Sonia went out to the barn, and Nicholas went after her, and he finally decided that he loved her, and they kissed. And now he's decided he wants to marry her, but his mother is against it. because he's the last hope for the Rostov family. And he needs to marry someone rich.
But she doesn't seem to be planning on doing it.
No. Because he's like, I will do anything for my family. I will die for my family. But also, my feelings.
He was like, I would sacrifice anything except for all this stuff. It's not that I wouldn't sacrifice anything, because I would sacrifice anything. But my problem is that they want me to sacrifice something. That's the really fucked up part. Not that I wouldn't do it. Because I would, but they shouldn't want me to.
Yeah. As long as they don't ask me to.
So the Rostov's gooses are cooked. We're already at 1811 to 1812.
Are we getting to the end of the war?
I don't know. I've never read this book.
Oh, I just wondered if you knew.
I know literally nothing about this book.
No. I was wondering if you knew about the Napoleonic Wars.
No.
No.
I can't remember.
We've
already looked them up while sitting here.
Okay, no, we got some time to go.
But
I wasn't sure if you had done some late night reading.
If I did, the dates would all be gone. I don't retain stuff.
Right, the dates. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like there's going to be way more war.
I keep waiting for it. I'm not sure.
You were waiting for it even when it was going on.
Yeah, I know. It's true. We had some.
1811.
Un petit peu.
Un petit peu. Un petit peu. Un petit peu. Un petit peu.
And yeah. No, is anything else going on?
No.
Okay, that's pretty much it. Natasha's sad.
Mm-hmm.
She's been wasted.
She is.
Her best years.
The youth is being squandered on the insides of the dining room, drawing room.
Yeah.
Why do they call it a drawing room? Oh, I know.
It's where you draw everyone to it.
I like that. That's probably it. Sounds like it's it. Chapter 1. After Prince Andrew's engagement to Natasha, Pierre, without... Oh, do you want to talk about that?
Hmm?
The fact that you felt like there was a foreshadowing, smattering.
Yeah, I've just been waiting for Pierre to be there, looking after her.
No, but the blue and the...
Oh, yeah. Sonia, oh, that's right. Sonia was looking in a looking glass.
Which is for looking into the...
Uh-huh.
You know?
Yeah.
That place.
And she didn't have a vision. But then Natasha was like, what did you see? And Sonia made up some things.
And Natasha's like, why am I the only one who can never see anything? It's like, then you realize it's probably because everyone else is lying. And she's the only one who's like, there's nothing there.
Right. And then there was like some illusion. Sonia said like, yes, it was like red and blue, which Natasha had described Pierre as being a while back. So I think there's something about Pierre in the future.
Foot.
Yes. That's my assertion.
I feel like it's about to happen.
We'll see.
After Prince Andrew's engagement to Natasha, Pierre, without any apparent cause, suddenly felt it impossible to go on living as before. Firmly convinced as he was of the truths revealed to him by his benefactor, and happy as he had been, benefactor? What benefactor?
Oh, Alexovich?
And happy as he had been in perfecting his inner man, to which he had devoted himself with such ardor, all the zest of such a life vanished after the engagement of Andrew and Natasha and the death of Joseph Alexovich, the news of which reached him almost at the same time. Only the skeleton of life remained, his house, a brilliant wife who now enjoyed the favors of a very important personage, acquaintance with all Petersburg, and his court service with its dull formalities. And this life suddenly seemed to Pierre unexpectedly loathsome. He ceased keeping a diary, avoided the company of the brothers, began going to the club again. Oh, he's up in the club. Drank a great deal, and came once more in touch with the bachelor sets, leading such a life that the Countess Helena thought it necessary to speak severely to him about it. Pierre felt that she was right, and to avoid compromising her, went away to Moscow.
In Moscow, as soon as he entered his huge house, in which the faded and fading princesses still lived, with its enormous retinue, as soon as, driving through the town, he saw the Iberian shrine with innumerable tapers burning before the golden covers of the icons, the Kremlin square with its snow undisturbed by vehicles, the sleigh drivers and hovels of the Sivstev, Vrajok, those old Muscovites who desired nothing, hurried nowhere and were ending their days leisurely. When he saw those old Moscow ladies, the Moscow balls, and the English club, he felt himself at home in a quiet haven. In Moscow, he felt at peace, at home, warm and dirty as in an old dressing gown.
Moscow society, from the old women down to the children, received Pierre like a long-expected guest whose place was always ready awaiting him. For Moscow society, Pierre was the nicest, kindest, most intellectual, merriest, and most magnanimous of cranks, a heedless, genial nobleman of the old Russian type. His purse was always empty because it was open to everyone.
Benefit performances, poor pictures, statues, benevolent societies, gypsy choirs, schools, subscription dinners, sprees, Freemasons, churches, and books. No one and nothing met with a refusal from him, and had it not been for two friends who had borrowed large sums from him and taken him under their protection, he would have given everything away. There was never a dinner or soiree at the club without him. As soon as he sank into his place on the sofa after 2 bottles of Margaux, he was surrounded, and talking, disputing, and joking began. When there were quarrels, his kindly smile and well-timed jests reconciled the antagonists. The Masonic dinners were dull and dreary when he was not there.
When after a bachelor's supper, he rose with his amiable and kindly smile, yielding to the entreaties of the festive company to drive off somewhere with them, shouts of delight and triumph arose among the young men. At balls, he danced if a partner was needed. Young ladies, married and unmarried, liked him because without making love to any of them, he was equally amiable to all, especially after everything... What? Especially...
After supper?
Things doing a weird thing. Especially after supper. Il est charmant, il n'a pas de sexe. Sex, they said of him.
He is charming, he has no sex. What? Do they mean like sex or gender?
I think gender.
Okay. Cool. Pierre was one of those retired gentlemen in waiting, of whom there were hundreds, good-humoredly, ending their days in Moscow. Ending their days? Isn't he like 35?
Yeah, he also was never popular, so I don't understand what's happening.
Right.
Okay. Ending their days. How horrified he would have been 7 years before when he first arrived from abroad, had he been told that there was no need for him to seek or plan anything, that his rut had long been shaped, eternally predetermined, and that, wriggle as he might, he could be what all in his position were. He could not have believed it. Had he not at one time longed with all his heart to establish a republic in Russia, then himself to be a Napoleon, then to be a philosopher, and then a strategist? What sentence is this?
Had he not have, I was like, what are we talking about?
Had he not at one time longed with all his heart to establish a republic in Russia, then himself to be Napoleon, then to be a philosopher, and then a strategist and the conqueror of Napoleon? Sure. Had he not seen the Had he not seen the possibility of and passionately desired the regeneration of the sinful human race and his own progress to the highest degree of perfection? Had he not established schools and hospitals and liberated his serfs?
But instead of all that, here he was, the wealthy husband of an unfaithful wife, a retired gentleman in waiting, fond of eating and drinking, and, as he unbuttoned his waistcoat, of abusing the government a bit, a member of the Moscow English Club and a universal favorite in Moscow society. For a long time, he could not reconcile himself to the idea that he was one of those same retired Moscow gentlemen-in-waiting he had so despised 7 years before.
Sometimes he consoled himself with the thought that he was only living this life temporarily. But then he was shocked by the thought of how many, like himself, had entered that life and that club temporarily, with all their teeth and hair, and had only left it when not a single tooth or hair remained.
In moments of pride, when he thought of his position, it seemed to him that he was quite different and distinct from those other retired gentlemen-in-waiting he had formerly despised. They were empty, stupid, contented fellows, satisfied with their position, while I am still discontented and want to do something for mankind. But perhaps all these comrades of mine struggled just like me and sought something new, a path in life of their own, and like me were brought by force of circumstances, society, and race, by that elemental force against which man is powerless, to the condition I am in, said he to himself in moments of humility. And after living some time in Moscow, he no longer despised, but began to grow fond of, to respect, and to pity his comrades in destiny, as he pitied himself.
Pierre no longer suffered moments of despair, hypochondria, and disgust with life, but the malady that had formerly found expression in such acute attacks was driven inwards and never left him for a moment. What for? Why? What is going on in the world? He would ask himself in perplexity several times a day, involuntarily beginning to reflect anew on the meaning of the phenomena of life, but knowing by experience that there were no answers to these questions. He made haste to turn away from them, and took up a book or hurried off to the club or to Apollon Nikolaevich's to exchange the gossip of the town.
Helena, who has never cared for anything but her own body and is one of the stupidest women in the world, thought Pierre, is regarded by people as the acme of intelligence and refinement, and they pay homage to her. Napoleon Bonaparte was despised by all as long as he was great. But now that he has become a wretched comedian, the Emperor Francis wants to offer him his daughter in an illegal marriage. Okay. The Spaniards, through the Catholic clergy, offer praise to God for their victory over the French on the 4th of June, and the French Catholic clergy offer praise because on that same 14th of June, they defeated the Spaniards. My brother Masons swear by the blood that they are ready to sacrifice everything for their neighbor, but they do not give a ruble each to the collections for the poor, and they intrigue the Astrea Lodge against the Manna Seekers, and fuss about an authentic Scotch carpet and a charter that nobody needs, and the meaning of which the very man who wrote it does not understand. We all profess the Christian law of forgiveness of injuries and love of our neighbors, the law in honor of which we have built in Moscow 40 times 40 churches. But yesterday a deserter was knouted to death, and a minister of that same law of love and forgiveness, a priest, gave the soldier a cross to kiss before his execution. So thought Pierre, and the whole of this general deception, which everyone accepts, accustomed as he was to it, astonished him each time, as if it were something new. I understand the deception and confusion, he thought, but how am I to tell them all that I see? I have tried, and have always found that they too, in the depths of their souls, understand it as I do, and only try not to see it. So it appears that it must be so. But what is to become of me? Thought he. He had the unfortunate capacity many men, especially Russians, have of seeing and believing in the possibility of goodness and truth, but of seeing the evil and falsehood of life too clearly to be able to take a serious part in it. Every sphere of work was connected, in his eyes, with evil and deception. Whatever he tried to be, whatever he engaged in, the evil and falsehood of it repulsed him, and blocked every path of activity. Yet he had to live and to find occupation. It was too dreadful to be under the burden of these insoluble problems, so he abandoned himself to any distraction in order to forget them. He frequented every kind of society, drank much, bought pictures, engaged in building, and above all, read.
He read and read everything that came to hand. On coming home, while his valet was still taking off his things, he picked up a book and began to read. From reading, he passed to sleeping, from sleeping to gossip in the drawing rooms of the club, from gossip to carousals and women, from carousals back to gossip, reading and wine. Drinking became more and more a physical and also a moral necessity. Though the doctors warned him that with his corpulence, wine was dangerous for him, he drank a great deal. He was only quite at ease when, having poured several glasses of wine mechanically into his large mouth, he felt a pleasant warmth in his body, an amiability toward all his fellows, and a readiness to respond superficially to every idea without probing it deeply. Only after emptying a bottle or two did he feel dimly that the terribly tangled skein of life which previously had terrified him was not as dreadful as he had thought. He was always conscious of some aspect of that skein, as with a buzzing in his head after dinner or supper he chatted or listened to conversation or read. But under the influence of wine, he said to himself, "It doesn't matter, I'll get it unraveled. I have a solution ready, but I have no time now. I'll think it all out later on." But the later on never came.
In the morning, on an empty stomach, all the old questions appeared as insoluble and terrible as ever. And Pierre hastily picked up a book. If anyone came to see him, he was glad.
Sometimes he remembered how he had heard that soldiers in war, when entrenched under the enemy's fire, if they have nothing to do, try hard to find some occupation, the more easily to bear the danger. To Pierre, all men seemed like those soldiers, seeking refuge from life, some in ambition, some in cards, some in framing laws, some in women, some in toys, some in horses, some in politics, some in sport, some in wine, and some in governmental affairs. Nothing is trivial and nothing is important. It's all the same, only to save oneself from it as best one can, thought Pierre, only not to see it, that dreadful it. Very postmodern here.
Chapter 2. At the beginning of winter, Prince Nicolas Bolkonski and his daughter moved to Moscow. At that time, enthusiasm for the Emperor Alexander's regime had weakened, and a patriotic and anti-French tendency prevailed there. And this, together with his past and his intellect and his originality, at once made Pierre Nicolas Bolkonski
Prince.
Thank you. I was like, what?
Confusing.
At once made Prince. I think sometimes I'm reading and my eyes get cross-eyed with all the. Made Prince Nicolas Bolkonski an object of particular respect. This is the little guy, right? How old is he now?
No, it's not. It's the old guy.
It is, okay.
The old man.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
okay. The baby's named Nicholas too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he hasn't got a daughter.
Ah. I was like, okay. At once made Prince Nicolas Bolkonski an object of particular respect to the Muscovites, and the center of the Moscow opposition to the government.
The prince had aged very much that year. He showed marked signs of senility by a tendency to fall asleep, forgetfulness of quite recent events, remembrance of remote ones, and the childish vanity with which he accepted the role of head of the Moscow opposition. In spite of this, the old man inspired in all his visitors alike a feeling of respectful veneration, especially of an evening when... Is that right? Mm-hmm. I feel like my book is skipping pages. Especially of an evening when he came in to tea in his old-fashioned coat and powdered wig, and aroused by anyone, told his abrupt stories of the past or uttered yet more abrupt and scathing criticisms of the present. For them all, that old-fashioned house with its gigantic mirrors, pre-revolution furniture, powdered footmen, and the stern, shrewd old man, himself a relic of the past century, with his gentle daughter and the pretty Frenchwoman, who were reverently devoted to him, presented a majestic and agreeable spectacle. But the visitors did not reflect that. Besides the couple of hours during which they saw their host, there were also 22 hours in the day during which the private and intimate life of the house continued.
Latterly, that private life had become very trying for Princess Mary. There in Moscow, she was deprived of her greatest pleasures, talks with the pilgrims and the solitude which refreshed her at Bald Hills. And she had none of the advantages and pleasures of city life. She did not go out into society. Everyone knew that her father would not let her go anywhere without him, and his failing health prevented his going out himself, so that she was not invited to dinners and evening parties. She had quite abandoned the hope of getting married. She saw the coldness and the malevolence with which the old prince received and dismissed the young men, possible suitors, who sometimes appeared at their house. She had no friends. During this visit to Moscow, she had been disappointed in the two who had been nearest to her. Mademoiselle Bourienne, with whom she had never been able to be quite frank, had now become unpleasant to her, and for various reasons, Princess Mary avoided her. Julie, with whom she had corresponded for the last 5 years, was in Moscow, but proved to be quite alien to her when they met. Just then, Julie, who by the death of her brothers had become one of the richest heiresses in Moscow, was in the full whirl of society pleasures. She was surrounded by young men who, she fancied, had suddenly learned to appreciate her worth. Julie was at that stage in the life of a society woman when she feels that her last chance of marrying has come, and that her fate must be decided now or never. On Thursdays, Princess Mary remembered with a mournful smile that she now had no one to write to, since Julie, whose presence gave her no pleasure, was here, and they met every week. Like the old émigré who declined to marry the lady with whom he had spent his evenings for years, she regretted Julie's presence and having no one to write to. In Moscow, Princess Mary had no one to talk to, no one to whom to confide her sorrow, and much sorrow fell to her lot just then. The time for Prince Andrew's return and marriage was approaching, but his request to her to prepare his father for it had not been carried out. In fact, it seemed as if matters were quite hopeless, for at every mention of the young Countess Rostova, the old prince, who apart from that was usually in a bad temper, lost control of himself. Another lately added sorrow rose from the lessons she gave her 6-year-old nephew. To her consternation, she detected in herself in relation to little Nicholas some symptoms of her father's irritability. However often she told herself that she must not get irritable when teaching her nephew, almost every time that, pointer in hand, she sat down to show him the French alphabet, she so longed to pour her own knowledge quickly and easily into the child, who was already afraid that Auntie might at any moment get angry.
Oh, wow.
That at his slightest inattention she trembled, became flustered and heated, raised her voice, and sometimes pulled him by the arm and put him in the corner. Having put him in the corner, she would herself begin to cry over her cruel, evil nature, and little Nicholas, following her example, would sob, and without permission would leave his corner, come to her, pull her wet hands from her face, and comfort her. But what distressed the princess most of all was her father's irritability, which was always directed against her, and had of late amounted to cruelty. Had he forced her to prostrate herself to the ground all night, had he beaten her or made her fetch wood or water, it would never have entered her mind to think her position hard. But this loving despot, the more cruel because he loved her and for that reason tormented himself and her, knew how not merely to hurt and humiliate her deliberately, but to show her that she was always to blame for everything. Of late, he had exhibited a new trait that tormented Princess Mary more than anything else. This was his ever-increasing intimacy with Mademoiselle Bourienne. The idea that at the first moment of receiving the news of his son's intentions had occurred to him in jest, that if Andrew got married, he himself would marry Bourienne, had evidently pleased him. And latterly, he had persistently, and as it seemed to Princess Mary merely to offend her, shown special endearments to the companion and expressed his dissatisfaction with his daughter by demonstrations of love to Bourienne.
Jesus. Mm-hmm. One day in Moscow, in Princess Mary's presence, she thought her father did it purposely when she was there, the old prince kissed Mademoiselle Bourienne's hand and, drawing her to him, embraced her affectionately. Princess Mary flushed and ran out of the room. A few minutes later, Mademoiselle Bourienne came into Princess Mary's room, smiling and making cheerful remarks in her agreeable voice. Princess Mary hastily wiped away her tears, went resolutely up to Mademoiselle Bourienne, and, evidently unconscious of what she was doing, began shouting in angry haste at the Frenchwoman, her voice breaking. "It's horrible, vile, inhuman to take advantage of the weakness." She did not finish. "Leave my room," she exclaimed, and burst into sobs.
Next day, the prince did not say a word to his daughter, but she noticed that at dinner he gave orders that Mademoiselle Bourienne should be served first. After dinner, when the footman handed coffee and from habit began with the princess, the prince suddenly grew furious, threw his stick at Philip, and instantly gave instructions to have him conscripted for the army.
Jesus. "He doesn't obey. I said it twice and he doesn't obey. She's the first person in this house. She's my best friend," cried the prince. "And if you allow yourself," he screamed in a fury, addressing Princess Mary for the first time, "to forget yourself again before her as you dared to do yesterday, I will show you who is..." Master in this house. Go, don't let me set eyes on you. Beg her pardon. I can't believe this. It's wonderful.
Princess Mary asked Mademoiselle Bourienne's pardon.
Fuck you.
And also her father's pardon for herself and for Philip the footman, who had begged for her intervention.
At such moments, something like a pride of sacrifice gathered in her soul. What else is there? And suddenly that father whom she had judged would look for his spectacles in her presence, fumbling near them and not seeing them, or would forget something that had just occurred, or take a false step with his failing legs and turn to see if anyone had noticed his feebleness, or, worst of all, at dinner, when there were no visitors to excite him, would suddenly fall asleep, letting his napkin drop and his shaking head sink over his plate. He is old and feeble, and I dare to condemn him, she thought at such moments, with a feeling of revulsion against herself.
Ugh.
Great.
Do you think she ever wins?
No.
No?
No.
Okay. Chapter 3. In 1811, there was living in Moscow a French doctor, Métivier, who had rapidly become the fashion. He was enormously tall, handsome, amiable as Frenchmen are, and was, as all Moscow said, an extraordinarily clever doctor. He was received in the best houses not merely as a doctor, but as an equal.
Prince Nicholas had always ridiculed medicine, but latterly, on Mademoiselle Bourienne's advice, had allowed this doctor to visit him and had grown accustomed to him. Métivier came to see the prince about twice a week.
On December 6th, St. Nicholas's Day and the prince's name day, all Moscow came to the prince's front door, but he gave orders to admit no one and to invite to dinner only a small number, a list of whom he gave to Princess Mary.
Métivier, who came in the morning with his felicitations, considered it proper in his quality of Doctor de forcer la consigne. I don't know what that means.
To force the guard.
As he told Princess Mary, and went in to see the prince. It happened that on that morning of his name day, the prince was in one of his worst moods. He had been going about the house all the morning, finding fault with everyone and pretending not to understand what was said to him and not to be understood himself. Princess Mary well knew this mood of quiet, absorbed querulousness, which generally culminated in a burst of rage. And she went about all that morning as though facing a cocked and loaded gun and awaiting the inevitable explosion, until the doctor's arrival in the morning had passed off safely. Oh, okay, that's a sentence. Until the doctor's arrival, the morning had passed off safely.
Oh my God, it's hard.
Why would you think that was going to be the sentence? After admitting the doctor, Princess Mary sat down with a book in the drawing room, near the door, through which she could hear all that passed in the study.
At first she heard only Métivier's voice, then her father's, then both voices began speaking at the same time. The door was flung open, and on the threshold appeared the handsome figure of the terrified Métivier with his shock of black hair, and the prince in his dressing gown and fez, his face distorted with fury and the pupils of his eyes rolled downwards.
"You don't understand," shouted the prince, "but I do. French spy, slave of Bonaparte's spy, get out of my house. Be off, I tell you."
Métivier, shrugging his shoulders, went up to Mademoiselle Bourienne, who at the sound of shouting had run in from an adjoining room.
"The prince is not very well, bile and rush of blood to the head. Keep calm, I will call again tomorrow," said Métivier, and putting his fingers to his lips, he hastened away.
Through the study door came the sound of slippered feet and the cry, "Spies! Traitors! Traitors everywhere! Not a moment's peace in my own house!"
After Métivier's departure, the old prince called his daughter in, and the whole weight of his wrath fell on her. She was to blame that a spy had been admitted. Had he not told her, yes, told her to make a list and not to admit anyone who was not on that list? Then why was that scoundrel admitted? She was the cause of it all. With her, he said, he could not have a moment's peace and could not die quietly.
"No, ma'am, we must part, we must part. Understand that, understand it. I cannot endure any more," he said, and left the room. Then, as if afraid she might find some means of consolation, he returned, and trying to appear calm, added, "And don't imagine I have said this in a moment of anger. I am calm. I've thought it over, and it will be carried out. We must part. So find some place for yourself." But he could not restrain himself, and with the virulence of which only one who loves is capable, Evidently suffering himself, he shook his fists at her and screamed,
"If only some fool would marry her!" Then he slammed the door, sent for Mademoiselle Bourienne, and subsided into his study.
At 2:00, the 6 chosen guests assembled for dinner.
These guests, the famous Count Rostopchin, Prince Lopukhin, with his nephew, General Chatrov, an old war comrade of the prince's, and of the younger generation, Pierre and Boris Drubetskoy, awaited the prince in the drawing room.
Boris, who had come to Moscow on leave a few days before, had been anxious to be presented to Prince Nicolas Bolkonski, and had contrived to ingratiate himself so well that the old prince, in his case, made an exception to the rule of not receiving bachelors in his house.
The prince's house did not belong to what is known as fashionable society, but his little circle, though not much talked about in town, was one it was more flattering to be received in than any other. Boris had realized this the week before, when the commander-in-chief, in his presence, invited Rostopchin to dinner on St. Nicholas's Day, and Rostopchin had replied that he could not come.
On that day I always go to pay my devotions to the relics of Prince Nicolas Bolkonski.
"Oh, yes, yes," replied the commander-in-chief. "How is he?"
A small group that had assembled before dinner in the lofty old-fashioned drawing room with its old furniture resembled the solemn gathering of a court of justice. All were silent or talked in low tones. Prince Nicholas came in, serious and taciturn. Princess Mary seemed even quieter and more diffident than usual. The guests were reluctant to address her, feeling that she was in no mood for their conversation. Count Rostopchin alone kept the conversation going, now relating the latest town news and now the latest political gossip.
Lopukhin and the old general occasionally took part in the conversation. Prince Bolkonski listened as a presiding judge receives a report, only now and then, silently or by a brief word, showing that he took heed of what was being reported to him. The tone of the conversation was such as indicated that no one approved of what was being done in the political world. Incidents were related, evidently confirming the opinion that everything was going from bad to worse, but whether telling a story or giving an opinion, the speaker always stopped, or was stopped, at the point beyond which his criticism might touch the sovereign himself.
At dinner, the talk turned on the latest political news, Napoleon's seizure of the Duke of Oldenburg's territory, and the Russian note, hostile to Napoleon, which had been sent to all the European ports.
"Bonaparte treats Europe as a pirate does a captured vessel," said Count Rostopchin, repeating a phrase he had uttered several times before. "One only wonders at the long-suffering or blindness of the crowned heads. Now the Pope's turn has come, and Bonaparte doesn't scruple to depose the head of the Catholic Church, yet all keep silent. Our sovereign alone has protested against the seizure of the Duke of Oldenburg's territory, and even..." Count Rostopchin paused, feeling that he had reached the limit beyond which censure was impossible.
"Other territories have been offered in exchange for the Duchy of Oldenburg," said Prince Bolkonski. "He shifts the dukes about as I might move my serfs from Bald Hills to Bogochorovo or my Ryazan estates."
"The Duke of Oldenburg bears his misfortunes with admirable strength of character and resignation," remarked Boris, joining in respectfully.
He said this because on his journey from Petersburg, he had had the honor of being presented to the Duke. Prince Bolkonski glanced at the young man as if about to say something in reply, but changed his mind, evidently considering him too young.
"I have read our protests about the Oldenburg affair and was surprised how badly the note was worded," remarked Count Rostopchin in the casual tone of a man dealing with a subject quite familiar to him.
Pierre looked at Rostopchin with naive astonishment, not understanding why he should be disturbed by the bad composition of the note.
"Does it matter, Count, how the note is worded?" he asked, "so long as its substance is forcible?"
"Dear fellow, with our 500,000 troops, it should be easy to have a good style," returned Count Rostopchin.
Pierre now understood the Count's dissatisfaction with the wording of the note.
"One would have thought quill drivers enough had sprung up," remarked the old prince. "There in Petersburg, they are always writing, not notes only, but even new laws. My Andrew there has written a whole volume of laws for Russia. Nowadays, they are always writing." And he laughed unnaturally.
There was a momentary pause in the conversation. The old general cleared his throat to draw attention.
"Did you hear of the last event at the review in Petersburg, the figure cut by the new French ambassador?"
"Eh? Yes, I heard something. He said something awkward in His Majesty's presence."
His Majesty drew attention to the Grenadier Division, And to the march past, continued the general. And it seems the ambassador took no notice and allowed himself to reply that, we in France pay no attention to such trifles. The emperor did not condescend to reply. At the next review, they say the emperor did not once deign to address him.
All was silent. On this fact relating to the emperor personally, it was impossible to pass any judgment.
Impudent fellow, said the prince. You know Métivier? I turned him out of my house this morning. He was here. They admitted him in spite of my request that they should let no one in, he went on, glancing angrily at his daughter.
And he narrated his whole conversation with the French doctor, and the reasons that convinced him that Métivier was a spy. Though these reasons were very insufficient and obscure, no one made any rejoinder.
After the roast, champagne was served. The guests rose to congratulate the old prince. Princess Mary, too, went round to him.
He gave her a cold, angry look and offered her his wrinkled, clean-shaven cheek to kiss. The whole expression of his face told her that he had not forgotten the morning's talk, that his decision remained in force, and only the presence of visitors hindered his speaking of it to her now.
When they went into the drawing room where coffee was served, the old men sat together.
Prince Nicholas grew more animated and expressed his views on the impending war.
He said that our wars with Bonaparte would be disastrous so long as we sought alliances with the Germans and thrust ourselves into European affairs, into which we had been drawn by the Peace of Tilsit. We ought not to fight either for or against Austria. Our political interests are all in the East, and in regard to Bonaparte, the only thing is to have an armed frontier and a firm policy, and he will never dare to cross the Russian frontier, as was the case in 1807.
How can we fight the French, Prince? Said Count Rostopchin. Can we arm ourselves against our teachers and divinities? Look at our youths, look at our ladies. The French are our gods. Paris is our kingdom of heaven.
He began speaking louder, evidently to be heard by everyone.
French dresses, French ideas, French feelings. There now, you turn Métivier out by the scruff of his neck because he is a Frenchman and a scoundrel, but our ladies crawl after him on their knees. I went to a party last night, and there, out of 5 ladies, 3 were Roman Catholics and had the Pope's indulgence for doing wool work on Sundays. And they themselves sit there nearly naked, like the signboards at our public health baths, if I may say so. What? Ah, when one looks at our young people, Prince, one would like to take Peter the Great's old cudgel out of the museum and belabor them in the Russian way till all the nonsense jumps out of them.
In the Russian way. All were silent. The old prince looked at Rostopchin with a smile and wagged his head approvingly.
Well, goodbye, Your Excellency. Keep well, said Rostopchin, getting up with characteristic briskness, and holding out his hand to the prince.
Goodbye, my dear fellow. His words are music. Never tire of hearing him, said the old prince, keeping hold of the hand and offering his cheek to be kissed.
Following Rostopchin's example, the others also rose.
I hate him.
Yeah.
I hate him so much.
Yeah.
Can you please stop abusing your daughter?
No. Maybe she'll get married.
Also, why does no one stands up for her, except like maybe the butler or whoever that was.
When did they didn't stand up for her?
No, I don't know. When he was like trying to serve her.
Yeah, that was just out of habit.
Right. No one is like, hey,
Intolerable.
maybe don't.
Intolerable.
Leave her be. Why are you being so cruel to her?
I don't know what the deal is with him. He's just a tyrant, you know?
Yeah, he's just miserable. And needs to take it out on the one person that he knows isn't going to leave him.
Oh, almost.
I'm also getting really tired of all these dinner parties. I know this is the point. It's just gossip. Sure, it's political, but like I know this is the point that actually, you know, Tolstoy isn't showing us what's going on in all these countries. He's just showing all the noblemen talking about it. It's really presumptuous and annoying.
What's presumptuous? The gossiping?
Yeah, they just get to like to talk about it, and they're not really doing anything about it.
I mean, it's that or the army. Or what Andrew's doing.
Right. But we're not like, the story isn't like with Andrew, him writing out the laws. Most of the story is exactly this. It's like, and it's another party. And another group of random people who just like to hear themselves talk.
Yeah. What? Please. Chapter 4. How am I sleepy?
Maybe she'll get married.
That's what I said.
What?
I said that 2 minutes ago. Maybe she'll get married. Yeah, maybe she will.
I'd love a good surprise.
Yeah.
I think a surprise is due.
Yeah. Same. There are no prospects though, so far.
Mm-hmm.
Part of me was like, maybe Boris is angly enough to.
Huh.
But then he has a.
I think he would.
He has a prospect, doesn't he?
Truly?
Yeah.
I think that's what he's going after. He's going to get her.
Okay.
I also don't think he would be a good husband for her.
There is no good husband for her.
I think there's like one decent guy in all of Moscow.
Who wants to be a pilgrim?
Yeah.
I don't think that there's like a socially acceptable good option for her at the moment. No. Not that we've met anyway.
Yeah.
But I was mostly saying just to like get her out of that house.
Get out of that situation. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't think Boris would be the most.
Well, that's just it. I'm like, I can see if she ended up with Boris that it might be even worse or just more of the same.
Why would it be worse?
You don't think he could become that tyrannical? I think if he was to
much what other people think.
Exactly. Well, to be cruel in that way? I just think he's like all like about like showing off and being politically savvy.
He is.
And I don't know if she is enough of a extrovert to satisfy him.
No, I mean I don't think that they would like actually be a good. We're not talking about like an actual good relationship.
No, so I'm saying like from that place, I can see like that he would like bitterly resent her. He would like blame her if anything went wrong.
Possibly, yeah.
I've been wrong before in this book. But I can't get a hold of this book at all. I don't know what it is.
Okay. I can't either. It's good thing we're 46% through it.
Yeah. Of course.
4. Princess Mary, as she sat listening to the old men talk and fault-finding, understood nothing of what she heard. She only wondered whether the guests had all observed her father's hostile attitude toward her. She did not even notice the special attentions and amiabilities shown her during dinner by Boris Drubetskoy. Who was...
Princess Mary turned with a minded, questioning look to Pierre. Doesn't that... Okay. Absent-minded, questioning look to Pierre? Doesn't that sound like it's missing something? Who, hat in hand and with a smile on his face, was the last of the guests to approach her after the old prince had gone out, and they were left alone in the drawing room.
May I stay a little longer, he said, letting his stout body sink into an armchair beside her.
Oh, yes, she answered. You noticed nothing? Her look asked.
Pierre was in an agreeable after-dinner mood. He looked straight before him and smiled quietly.
Have you known that young man long, Princess? He asked.
Who?
Drubetskoy.
No, not long.
Do you like him?
Yes, he's an agreeable young man. Why do you ask me that? Said Princess Mary, still thinking of that morning's conversation with her father.
Because I have noticed that when a young man comes on leave from Petersburg to Moscow, it is usually with the object of marrying an heiress.
You've observed that, said Princess Mary.
Yes, returned Pierre with a smile. And this young man now manages matters so that where there is a wealthy heiress, there he is too. I can read him like a book. At present, he is hesitating whom to lay siege to. You or Mademoiselle Julie Karagina. He is very attentive to her.
He visits them.
Yes, very often. And do you know the new way of courting? Said Pierre with an amused smile, evidently in that cheerful mood of good-humored raillery for which he so often reproached himself in his diary.
No, said Princess Mary.
To please Moscow girls, nowadays, one has to be melancholy. He's very melancholy with Mademoiselle Karagina, said Pierre.
Really? Asked Princess Mary, looking into Pierre's kindly face and still thinking of her own sorrow. It would be a relief, thought she, if I ventured to confide what I am feeling to someone. I should like to tell everything to Pierre. He is kind and generous. It would be a relief. He would give me advice. Encourages to love someone near to you and feel that, she went on in a trembling voice, that you can do nothing for him but grieve him, and to know that you cannot alter this. Then there is only one thing left, to go away. But where could I go?
What is wrong? What is it, Princess?
But without finishing what she was saying, Princess Mary burst into tears.
I don't know what is the matter with me today. Don't take any notice. Forget what I have said.
Pierre's gaiety vanished completely. He anxiously questioned the princess, asked her to speak out fully, and confide her grief to him. But she only repeated what she begged him to forget what she had said. That she begged him, what? That she did not remember what she had said, and that she had no trouble except the one he knew of, that Prince Andrew's marriage threatened to cause a rupture between father and son.
Have you any news of the Rostov? She asked, to change the subject. I was told they are coming soon. I am also expecting Andrew any day. I should like them to meet here.
And how does he now regard the matter? Asked Pierre, referring to the old prince.
Princess Mary shook her head.
What is to be done? In a few months the year will be up. The thing is impossible. I only wish I could spare my brother the first moments. I wish they could come sooner. I hope to be friends with her. You have known them a long time, said Princess Mary. Tell me honestly the whole truth. What sort of girl is she? And what do you think of her? The real truth, because you know Andrew is risking so much doing this against his father's will that I should like to know.
An undefined instinct told Pierre that these explanations and repeated requests to be told the whole truth expressed ill will on the princess's part toward her future sister-in-law, and a wish that he should disapprove of Andrew's choice. But in reply, he said what he felt, rather than what he thought.
I don't know how to answer your question, he said, blushing without knowing why. I really don't know what sort of girl she is. I can't analyze her at all. She is enchanting, but what makes her so, I don't know. That is all one can say about her.
Princess Mary sighed, and the expression on her face said, yes, that's what I expected and feared.
Is she clever? She asked.
Pierre considered.
I think not, he said. And yet, yes. She does not deign to be clever. Oh no, she is simply enchanting, and that is all.
Princess Mary again shook her head disapprovingly.
Ah, I so long to like her. Tell her. So, if you see her before I do.
I hear they are expected very soon, said Pierre.
Princess Mary told Pierre of her plan to become intimate with her future sister-in-law as soon as the Rostovs arrived, and to try to accustom the old prince to her. What a combustible and hilarious combination. The old man and Natasha.
I think you would like her.
And
then
that's very likely.
Princess Mary all the more.
That's very likely.
Like, why can't you be like her?
I think it's just going to be hectic, whatever it is.
I don't know.
I mean, not hectic, but like,
Yeah.
Who knows where that's going to go.
Chapter 5. Boris had not succeeded in making a wealthy match in Petersburg. I think we should go off your premonitions.
Which is?
You seem much more, I don't know.
Optimistic?
With it. Yeah. It seems like your things happen more often.
I don't even have premonitions. What are you talking about?
You were like, oh, Boris. And then lo and behold. Lo.
What did I say about him?
Behold. You're like, oh, I think Boris and married.
Oh.
We're going to get married.
Look, he's like the only one left. And he's a social climber, which means he'll overlook a lot of things. And also, frankly, I think it could work out if they both are just totally on different pages. Like he will speak up about, like he will do his thing and she will do hers, and that actually might be okay. What a low bar. To be like, hopefully they'll just mutually
They'll
leave
just
each
leave
other.
each other be. Never be in the same room together.
Because if she's allowed to do her like Godding and Jesusing, and if he's allowed to do his climbing, then like
Yeah.
whatever.
As long as they can each have their own hobbies.
But she doesn't like Brienne, which to me means that she would have no respect for Boris. I don't think she would be able to respect him.
No. He doesn't value any of the things she does.
She's obsessed with Lisa, and I do wonder, because we don't know anything about who she even was as a person, frankly.
Yeah.
Like, I can't tell if she's going to love Natasha or just be without her.
I'm not sure. Natasha's like the exact opposite.
Yeah, but she loved Lisa, remember?
But also, Lisa, you're right, she had no character. She was just sweet. She was an innocent that I think Mary took care of. Mary seems to like anything that she can dote on. I don't think she can dote on Natasha. But maybe they'll like each other.
Okay.
Boris had not succeeded in making a wealthy match in Petersburg, so with the same object in view, he came to Moscow. There he wavered between the two richest heiresses, Julie and Princess Mary. Though Princess Mary, despite her plainness, seemed to him more attractive than Julie, he, without knowing why, felt awkward about paying court to her. When they had last met on the old prince's name day, she had answered at random all his attempts to talk sentimentally, evidently not listening to what he was saying.
Julie, on the contrary, accepted his attentions readily, though in a manner peculiar to herself.
She was 27. After the death of her brother, she had become very wealthy. She was by now decidedly plain. I didn't know she was plain.
By now.
Ah, yes. But thought herself not merely as good-looking as before, but even far more attractive. She was
I mean, she is, because listen to what you're saying.
Yeah. She was confirmed in this delusion by the fact that she had become a very wealthy heiress, and also by the fact that the older she grew, the less dangerous she became to men. And the more freely... What?
I don't know.
And the more freely they could associate with her and avail themselves of her suppers, soirees, and the animated company that assembled at her house without incurring any obligation. A man who would have been afraid 10 years before of going every day to the house where there was a girl of 17 there for fear of compromising her and committing himself would now go boldly every day and treat her not as a marriageable girl, but as a sexless acquaintance.
That winter, the Carrigans' house was the most agreeable and hospitable in Moscow. In addition to the formal evening and dinner parties, a large company, chiefly of men, gathered there every day, supping at midnight and staying till 3 in the morning. Julie never missed a ball, a promenade, or a play. Her dresses were always of the latest fashion. But in spite of that, she seemed to be disillusioned about everything and told everyone that she did not believe either in friendship or in love, or any of the joys of life, and expected peace only yonder. She adopted the tone of one who has suffered a great disappointment, like a girl who has either lost the man she loved or been cruelly deceived by him. Though nothing of the kind had happened to her, she was regarded in that light, and had even herself come to believe that she had suffered much in life. This melancholy, which did not prevent her amusing herself, did not hinder the young people who came to her house from passing the time pleasantly. Every visitor who came to the house paid his tribute to the melancholy mood of the hostess, and then amused himself with society gossip, dancing, intellectual games, and bouts rhymes, which were in vogue at the Carrigans. Only a few of these young men, among them Boris, entered more deeply into Julie's melancholy, and with these she had prolonged conversations in private on the vanity of all worldly things, and to them she showed her albums filled with mournful sketches, maxims, and verses. Look at my mournful verses.
That's what I would do.
Yeah.
To Boris, Julie was particularly gracious. She regretted his early disillusionment with life, offered him such consolation of friendship as she who had herself suffered so much could render, and showed him her album. Boris sketched 2 trees in the album and wrote, "Rustic trees, Your dark branches shed gloom and melancholy upon me. Beautiful. On another page, he drew a tomb and wrote, La mort est secourable, et la mort est tranquille. Ah, contre les douleurs, il n'y a pas d'autre asile. What's asile? Death gives relief, and death is peaceful. Ah, from suffering, there is no other refuge.
Cool. Julie said this was charming. There is something so enchanting in the smile of melancholy, she said to Boris, repeating word for word and a passage she had copied from a book. It is a ray of light in the darkness, a shade between sadness and despair, showing the possibility of consolation.
In reply, Boris wrote these lines. Aliment de poison d'une âme trop sensible, toi, sans qui le bonheur me serait impossible, tendre mélancolie, ah, viens me consoler, viens calmer les tourments de ma sombre retraite et mêle une douceur secrète. À ces pleurs que je sens couler. Poisonous nourishment of a too sensitive soul, thou without whom happiness would for me be impossible. Tender melancholy, ah, come to console me, come to calm the torments of my gloomy retreat and mingle a secret sweetness with these tears that I feel to be flowing.
Seems to be going well.
They're like so many teenagers.
Yeah,
right?
They're extremely rough right now. For Boris, Julie played most doleful nocturnes on her harp. Boris read Poor Liza aloud to her and more than once interrupted the reading because of the emotions that choked him.
Oh!
Meeting at large gatherings, Julie, no wonder he's more into Mary than Julie. He's like, I'm gonna be
I'm gonna kill myself.
fucking weeping for decades.
We're gonna become vampires together.
Yeah. Meeting at large gatherings, Julie and Boris looked on one another as the only souls who understood one another in a world of indifferent people.
Anna Mikhailovna, who often visited the Karagins while playing cards with the mother who made careful inquiries as to Julie's dowry, she was to have 2 estates in Penza and the Nizhegorod forests. Anna Mikhailovna regarded the refined sadness that united her son to the wealthy Julie with emotion and resignation to the divine will.
You are always charming and melancholy, my dear Julie, she said to the daughter. Boris says his soul finds repose at your house. He has suffered so many disappointments and is so sensitive, said she to the mother. Ah, my dear, I can't tell you how fond I have grown of Julie latterly. What? She said to her son. But who could help loving her? She is an angelic being. Ah, Boris, Boris. She paused. And how I pity her mother, she went on. Today she showed me her accounts and letters from Penza. They have enormous estates there. And she, poor thing, has no one to help her. And they cheat her so.
Oh, poor Julie. Boris smiled almost imperceptibly while listening to his mother. He laughed blandly at her naive diplomacy, but listened to what she had to say and sometimes questioned her carefully about the Penza and Nizhegorod estates.
Julie had long been expecting a proposal from her melancholy adorer and was ready to accept it. But some secret feeling of repulsion for her passionate desire to get married, for her artificiality. Look who's talking! And a feeling of horror at renouncing the possibility of real love still restrained Boris. His leave was expiring. He spent every day and whole days. Yeah. At the Karagins, and every day on thinking the matter over, told himself that he would propose tomorrow. But in Julie's presence, looking at her red face and chin, nearly always powdered, her moist eyes and her expression of continual readiness to pass at once from melancholy to an unnatural rapture of married bliss, Boris could not utter the decisive words, though in imagination he had long regarded himself as the possessor of those Penza and Nizhegorod estates, and had apportioned the use of the income from them. Julie saw Boris's indecision, and sometimes the thought occurred to her that she was repulsive to him. But her feminine self-deception, immediately supplied her with consolation, and she told herself that he was only shy from love. Her melancholy, however, began to turn to irritability, and not long before Boris's departure, she formed a definite plan of action. Just as Boris's leave of absence was expiring, Anatoly Kuragin made his appearance in Moscow and, of course, in the Karagins' drawing room. And Julie, suddenly abandoning her melancholy, became cheerful and very attentive to Kuragin.
Okay. My dear, said Anna Mikhailovna to her son, I know from a reliable source that Prince Vasily has sent his son to Moscow to get him married to Julie.
What? Did you get confused?
Oh, Kuragin and Karagin.
Yeah.
I'm so fond of Julie that I should be sorry for her. What do you think of it, my dear?
The idea of being made a fool of and of having thrown away that whole month of arduous melancholy service to Julie, and of seeing all the revenue from the Penza estates, which he had already mentally apportioned, you already made that joke, and put to proper use, fall into the hands of another, and especially into the hands of that idiot Anatoly, pained Boris. He drove to the Karagins with the firm intention of proposing. Julie met him in a gay, careless manner, spoke casually of how she had enjoyed yesterday's ball, and asked when he was leaving. Though Boris had come intentionally to speak of his love, and therefore meant to be tender, he began speaking irritably of feminine inconstancy, of how easily women can turn from sadness to joy, and how their moods depend solely on who happens to be paying court to them. Julie was offended, and replied that it was true that a woman needs variety, and the same thing over and over again would weary anyone.
Then I should advise you, Boris began, wishing to sting her. But at that instant the galling thought occurred to him that he might have to leave Moscow without having accomplished his aim, and have vainly wasted his efforts, which was a thing he never allowed to happen.
He checked himself in the middle of a sentence, lowered his eyes to avoid seeing her unpleasantly irritated and resolute face, and said,
I did not come here at all to quarrel with you. On the contrary.
He glanced at her to make sure that he might go on. Her irritability had suddenly quite vanished, and her anxious, imploring eyes were fixed on him with greedy expectation. I can always arrange so as not to see her often, thought Boris. The affair has been begun and must be finished. He blushed hotly, raised his eyes to hers, and said, You know my feelings for you.
There was no need to say more. Julie's face shone with triumph and self-satisfaction, but she forced Boris to say all that is said on such occasions, that he loved her, and had never loved any other woman more than her. She knew that for the Penza estates in Nizhgorod Forest, she could demand this, and she received what she demanded.
The affianced couple, no longer alluding to trees that shed gloom and melancholy upon them, planned the arrangements of a splendid house in Petersburg, paid calls, and prepared everything for a brilliant wedding.
So depressing.
There goes that.
I don't have to be around her. Yeah. Well,
that's what I was hoping for from Mary.
Right. But now she doesn't get anything. Chapter 6. At the end of January, old Count Rostov went to Moscow with Natasha and Sonia. The Countess was still unwell and unable to travel. It was impossible to wait for her recovery. Prince Andrew was expected in Moscow any day. The trousseau had to be ordered, and the estate near Moscow had to be sold, besides which the opportunity of presenting his future daughter-in-law to old Prince Bolkonski while he was in Moscow could not be missed. The Rostovs' Moscow house had not been heated that winter, and as they had come only for a short time, and the Countess was not with them, the Count decided to stay with Maria Dmitrievna Akrosimova, who had long been pressing her hospitality on them.
Late one evening, the Rostovs' 4 sleighs drove into Maria Dmitrievna's courtyard in the old Konyusheny street. Maria Dmitrievna lived alone. She had already married off her daughter, and her sons were all in the service.
She held herself as erect, told everyone her opinion as candidly, loudly, and bluntly as ever, and her whole bearing seemed a reproach to others for any weakness, passion, or temptation, the possibility of which she did not admit. From early in the morning, wearing a dressing jacket, she attended to her household affairs, and then she drove out on holy days to church, and after the service to jails and prisons on affairs of which she never spoke to anyone. On ordinary days, after dressing, she received petitioners of various classes, of whom there were always some. Then she had dinner, a substantial and appetizing meal at which there were always 3 or 4 guests. After dinner, she played a game of Boston, and at night she had the newspaper or a new book read to her while she knitted. She rarely made an exception and went out to pay visits, and then only to the most important persons in the town.
She had not yet gone to bed when the Rostovs arrived, and the pulley of the hall door squeaked from the cold as it let in the Rostovs and their servants. Maria Dmitrievna, with her spectacles hanging down on her nose and her head flung back, stood in the hall doorway looking with a stern, grim face at the new arrivals. One might have thought she was angry with the travellers and would immediately turn them out, had she not at the same time been giving careful instructions to the servants for the accommodation of the visitors and their belongings.
The Count's things, bring them here, she said, pointing to the portmanteaus and not greeting anyone. The young ladies, there's to the left. Now, what are you dawdling for? She cried to the maids. Get the samovar ready. You've grown plumper and prettier, she remarked, drawing Natasha, whose cheeks were glowing from the cold, to her by the hood. Foo, you're cold. Now take off your things, quick. She shouted to the Count, who was going to kiss her hand. You're half frozen, I'm sure. Bring some rum for tea. Bonjour, Sonia dear, she added, turning to Sonia, and indicating by this French greeting her slightly contemptuous, though affectionate attitude toward her.
When they came in to tea, having taken off their outdoor things and tidied themselves up after their journey, Maria Dmitrievna kissed them all in due order.
I'm heartily glad you have come and are staying with me. It was high time, she said, giving Natasha a significant look. The old man is here and his son's expected any day. You'll have to make his acquaintance. But we'll speak of that later on, she added, glancing at Sonia with a look that showed she did not want to speak of it in her presence. Now listen, she said to the Count, what do you want tomorrow? Whom will you send for? Shinshin? She crooked one of her fingers. The sniveling Anna Nikolovna? That's 2. She's here with her son. The son is getting married. Then Bezhikov, eh? He is here too, with his wife. We ran away from her, and she came galloping after him. He dined with me on Wednesday. As for them, and she pointed to the girls, tomorrow I'll take them first to the Iberian Shrine of the Mother of God, and then we'll drive to the Super Rogues. I suppose you'll have everything new. Don't judge by me. Sleeves nowadays are this size. The other day, young Princess Irina Vasilevna came to see me. She was an awful sight. Looked as if she had put 2 barrels on her arms. You know, not a day passes now without some new fashion. And what have you to do with yourself? And what have you to do yourself? She asked the Count sternly.
One thing has come on top of another, for rags to buy, and now a purchaser has turned up for the Moscow estate and for the house. If you will be so kind, I'll fix a time and go down to the estate just for a day and leave my lasses with you.
All right. They'll be safe with me, as safe as in Chancery. I'll take them where they must go, scold them a bit, and pet them a bit, said Maria Dmitrievna, touching her goddaughter and favorite Natasha on the cheek with her large hand.
Gross. Next morning, Maria Dmitrievna took the young ladies to the Iberian Shrine of the Mother of God and to Madame Super Rogue, who was so afraid of Maria Dmitrievna that she always let her have costumes at a loss merely to get rid of her. Maria Dmitrievna ordered almost the whole trousseau. When they got home, she turned everybody out of the room except Natasha and then called her pet to her armchair.
Well, now we'll talk. I congratulate you on your betrothed. You've hooked a fine fellow. I'm glad for your sake, and I've known him since he was so high. She held her hand a couple of feet from the ground. Natasha blushed happily. I like him and all his family. Now listen. You know that old Prince Nicholas much dislikes his sons marrying. The old fellow's crotchety. Of course, Prince Andrew is not a child and can shift without him. But it's not nice to enter a family against a father's will. One wants to do it peacefully and lovingly. You're a clever girl, and you'll know how to manage. Be kind and use your wits. Then all will be well.
Natasha remained silent, from shyness, Maria Dmitrievna supposed, but really because she disliked anyone interfering in what touched her love of Prince Andrew, which seemed to her so apart from all human affairs that no one could understand it. She loved and knew Prince Andrew. He loved her only, and was to come one of these days and take her. She wanted nothing more.
You see, I've known him a long time, and I'm also fond of Mary, your future sister-in-law. Husband's sisters bring up blisters, but this one wouldn't hurt a fly. She has asked me to bring you two together. Tomorrow you'll go with your father to see her. Be very nice and affectionate to her. You're younger than she. When he comes, he'll find you already know his sister and father and are liked by them. Am I right or not? Won't that be best?
Yes, it will, Natasha answered reluctantly.
Yes. Keep going?
One more?
Yeah. Chapter 7. Next day, by Maria Dmitrievna's advice, Count Rostov took Natasha to call on Prince Nicolas Bolkonski. The Count did not set out cheerfully on this visit. At heart, he felt afraid. He well remembered the last interview he had had with the old prince at the time of the enrollment. When in reply to an invitation to dinner, he had had to listen to an angry reprimand for not having provided his full quota of men. Natasha, on the other hand, having put on her best gown, was in the highest spirits. They can't help liking me, she thought. Everybody always has liked me, and I am so willing to do anything they wish, so ready to be fond of him for being his father, and of her for being his sister, that there is no reason for them not to like me.
They drove up to the gloomy old house on the Vozdizhenka and entered the vestibule.
The Lord have mercy on us, said the Count, half in jest, half in earnest. But Natasha noticed that her father was flurried on entering the anteroom and inquired timidly and softly whether the prince and princess were at home.
When they had been announced, a perturbation was noticeable among the servants. The footman who had gone to announce them was stopped by another in the large hall, and they whispered to one another. Then a maidservant ran into the hall and hurriedly said something, mentioning the princess. At last, an old, cross-looking footman came and announced to the Rostovs that the prince was not receiving, but that the princess begged them to walk up. The first person who came to meet the visitors was Mademoiselle Bourienne. She greeted the father and daughter with special politeness and showed them to the princess's room. The princess, looking excited and nervous, her face flushed in patches, ran in to meet the visitors, treading heavily and vainly trying to appear cordial and at ease. From the first glance, Princess Mary did not like Natasha. She thought her too fashionably dressed, too frivolously gay and vain. She did not at all realize that before having seen her future sister-in-law, she was prejudiced against her by involuntary envy of her beauty, youth and happiness, as well as by jealousy of her brother's love for her. Apart from this insuperable antipathy to her, Princess Mary was agitated just then because on the Rostovs being announced, the old prince had shouted that he did not wish to see them, that Princess Mary might do so if she chose, but they were not to be admitted to him. She had decided to receive them, but feared lest the prince might at any moment indulge in some freak, as he seemed much upset by the Rostovs' visit.
There, my dear princess, I've brought you my songstress, said the Count, bowing and looking round uneasily as if afraid the old prince might appear. I'm so glad you should get to know one another. Very sorry the prince is still ailing. And after a few more commonplace remarks, he rose. If you'll allow me to leave my Natasha in your hands for a quarter of an hour, princess, I'll drive round to see Anna Semenovna. It's quite near in the Dog's Square, and then I'll come back for her.
The Count had devised this diplomatic ruse, as he afterwards told his daughter, to give the future sisters-in-law an opportunity to talk to one another freely, but another motive was to avoid the danger of encountering the old prince of whom he was afraid. He did not mention this to his daughter, but Natasha noticed her father's nervousness and anxiety and felt mortified by it. She blushed for him, grew still angrier at having blushed, and looked at the princess with a bold and defiant expression which said that she was not afraid of anybody. The princess told the Count that she would be delighted and only begged him to stay longer at Anna Semenovna's, and he departed.
Despite the uneasy glances thrown at her by Princess Mary, who wished to have a tete with Natasha, Mademoiselle Bourienne remained in the room and persistently talked about Moscow amusements and theaters.
What's the matter with her?
I don't know. She's very little grace.
Okay. I thought that was her whole job.
Natasha felt offended by the hesitation she had noticed in the anteroom, by your father's nervousness, and by the unnatural manner of the princess, who, she thought, was making a favor of receiving her, and so everything displeased her. She did not like Princess Mary, whom she thought very plain, affected, and dry. Natasha suddenly shrank into herself and involuntarily assumed an offhand air which alienated Princess Mary still more. After 5 minutes of irksome, constrained conversation, they heard the sound of slippered feet rapidly approaching. Princess Mary looked frightened.
The door opened and the old prince, in a dressing gown and a white nightcap, came in.
Oh. Ah, madam, he began. Madam, Countess Rostova, if I'm not mistaken. I beg you to excuse me. I did not know, madam. God is my witness. I did not know you had honored us with a visit, and I came in such a costume only to see my daughter. I beg you to excuse me. God is my witness. I didn't know, he repeated, stressing the word God so unnaturally and so unpleasantly that Princess Mary stood with downcast eyes, not daring to look either at her father or at Natasha.
Nor did the latter, having risen in courtesy, know what to do. Mademoiselle Bourienne alone smiled briefly.
I beg you to excuse me. Excuse me, God is my witness. I did not know, muttered the old man, and after looking Natasha over from head to foot, he went out.
Okay. Mademoiselle Bourienne was the first to recover herself after this apparition and began speaking about the prince's indisposition. Natasha and Princess Mary looked at one another in silence, and the longer they did so without saying what they wanted to say, the greater grew their antipathy to one another.
I'm so uncomfortable right now.
You are?
Yeah. This is awful. When the Count returned, Natasha was impolitely pleased and hastened to get away. At that moment, she hated the stiff, elderly princess, who could place her in such an embarrassing position and had spent half an hour with her without once mentioning Prince Andrew. I couldn't begin talking about him in the presence of that Frenchwoman, thought Natasha. I don't know why. Same thought was meanwhile tormenting Princess Mary. She knew what she ought to have said to Natasha, but she had been unable to say it because Mademoiselle Bourienne was in the way, and because, without knowing why, she felt it very difficult to speak of the marriage. When the Count was already leaving the room, Princess Mary went up hurriedly to Natasha, took her by the hand, and said with a deep sigh, "Wait.
What?
I must."
Natasha glanced at her ironically without knowing why.
"Dear Natalie," said Princess Mary, "I want you to know that I am glad my brother has found happiness."
She paused, feeling that she was not telling the truth. Natasha noticed this and guessed its reason.
"I think, Princess, it is not convenient to speak of that now," she said with external dignity and coldness, though she felt the tears choking her.
What have I said and what have I done? Thought she as soon as she went out of the room.
They waited a long time for Natasha to come to dinner that day. She sat in her room crying like a child, blowing her nose and sobbing. Sonia stood beside her, kissing her hair.
Natasha, what is it about? She asked. What do they matter to you? It will all pass, Natasha.
If you only knew how offensive it was, as if I...
Don't talk about it, Natasha. It wasn't your fault, so why should you mind? Kiss me, said Sonia.
Natasha raised her head and, kissing her friend on the lips, pressed her wet face against her.
I can't tell you. I don't know. No one's to blame, said Natasha. It's my fault, but it all hurts terribly. Oh, why doesn't he come?
She came into dinner with red eyes. Maria Dmitrievna, who knew how the prince had received the Rostovs, pretended not to notice how upset Natasha was, and jested resolutely and loudly at table with the Count and the other guests.
Cool. This is going good.
Ugh.
Everything is really good.
This is just strange. I find all of this just very strange.
Yep.
What's Andrew doing?
Spa. It's at the spa.
Like, and apparently his dad does. Why don't they just get married already?
What do you mean?
If his dad was like, okay, wait a year. And then he's like, actually, wait, never.
Well, it hasn't been a year, I don't think.
But why the year if he doesn't care about the year anyway? He just doesn't want him to marry.
Because that was his original request.
That was
go against it.
Okay. It's a man of his word.
Mm-hmm. But I think he's got a wound that's opened up. I don't know.
My wound opened.
That's disgusting. That is revolting, in fact.
Yeah.
You know, if you're unhealthy, your wounds don't close.
Really? That makes sense.
Close fast.
Yeah, you don't have the platelets.
Yes. Remember the dog drama that happened in my previous abode? That those things like didn't close for a really long time. And I was like, it doesn't seem right. How long can something be?
You're about to coincide every person. Yeah, some people do really quickly.
This was like not, I wouldn't call it this not really quick. It seemed to me to be ages. I was like, this is worrisome, and if it was mine, I would be like, oops. So this is all going very well.
Yeah.
Clearly, it's not going to work out. That's what I'm getting. What are you getting?
Do you think they're going to get married at all?
No, that's what I'm saying. I think that whole situation's not going to work out.
That's so sad.
Are you sad?
Yeah.
Why are you sad? Who are you sad for?
I think it's like there's so much build up and then no payoff. Like it's so sad that they got engaged. And then had to be apart. Like I actually think they're in love, so I think that's really tragic.
You do? I thought
I just want them to be together. I want moments of happiness in this that aren't God related.
What's God related?
No, I'm just thinking of like the happiest moment in all of this has been Pierre by the river being like, my goodness. I guess there's been little moments, but it seems like they're so staccato.
Agree.
Like the second, so like Nicolas and Sonia finally get together, and then the mother's like, no, this cannot be. Right away.
Conflict.
Ah,
Drama.
drama. Yeah.
My manager just downloaded a tape, the tape for immigration.
Really? When did we tape that?
Right?
It's last week, right?
I mean, who can tell? Because of how time passes. Let me see.
Okay.
So, like, somebody downloaded them and sent them on.
Right. You got the notice of that?
Yes.
Okay.
But then, like, my agent downloaded. I sent the most recent one on the 6th.
Mm-hmm.
It was downloaded and I assume sent on the 6th. But then on the 7th, my agent downloaded it the day after it was due. I'm not sure what's happening there. And then the previous tape, which was sent on April 1st, was downloaded on April 1st,
Mm-hmm.
but then was again downloaded by somebody else today. What's happening?
It's 9 days.
9 days ago.
Do you think that's your managers or casting?
No, it's my manager's downloaded that, I can tell. Because I send it to certain people. We transfer, right? I send it to certain people, and then I get a thing that says, so-and-so downloaded your file. So-and-so else downloaded your file.
No, but I'm saying, like, if your managers forwarded... I actually don't know how they do this. If your managers forwarded the file, and then casting didn't download it. So just
No, they would have had to. I don't think that's how they do it because I never ever get a notice saying the casting downloaded it. So I think.
Oh really?
Ever.
I get that sometimes.
So I think it's always at the office downloaded and then sent, resent. They don't forward the link that I sent, so we transfer. Ever. So yeah. You get notices saying that casting downloaded the
But
files.
I don't know if that's Dropbox. It's like this person wants access to the Dropbox file. Like,
I don't know.
I don't know, man.
I don't know, man. I need to stop looking at the Sage menu. That's for sure. That's for damn sure.
Okay. I think we're gonna end there. We're gonna end there.
We're gonna
You're
end
giving
there.
me the yawns.
What?
You're giving me the yawns.
I had the yawns.
Be safe, everyone.